AI layoffs. Did you know that over 175,000 people this year so far have been laid off, and the reason cited for the layoff was AI? And so I asked the squad about this, I researched the topic, and here are the results.
Since 2023, U.S. employers have announced roughly 175,000 job cuts that explicitly named AI as the reason. That's not a slow trend. It's accelerating, and we're only a little over halfway through this year. Here's the shape of it. In 2023 and 2024 combined, AI-cited cuts were a rounding error, well under 20,000. 2025, 54,836. Then 2026 happened. Through June alone, 6 months, 101,743. That's already almost double all of last year, with half the year still on the clock. For 4 straight months, AI was the single most cited reason companies gave for cutting jobs at all. In May, it was 40% of everything Challenger tracked that month. There are a few different stories hiding under the words AI layoffs. Some companies are replacing work with AI tools directly. Some are just riding the same wave without a clean causal link. But the pattern worth your attention is simpler and uglier. A profitable company cuts payroll, and in the same earnings cycle, raises how much it's spending on AI data centers and chips. Watch what that actually looks like at 4 of the biggest players in tech. Meta cut about 8,000 jobs in 2026, roughly 10% of staff, plus another 6,000 open roles it simply closed. Its own CFO called it building a leaner company to move faster and to help offset, in her words, substantial investments. Those investments. Meta raised its 2026 AI infrastructure spending guide to somewhere between $130 and $145 billion. Free cash flow that quarter fell from $8.5 billion to under $800,000. That's not a typo. Under $800,000, largely eaten by AI capex, and over $1 billion in severance from the May cuts. Do the actual math. Even the high-end analyst estimate for what those layoffs save Meta a year is about $2.4 billion. Against $130 to $145 billion in spending, that's roughly 2%. This was never about balancing a budget with headcount. It's about reordering who gets paid first, the payroll or the silicon. Oracle's workforce dropped from about 162,000 to 141,000 in a single fiscal year. 21,000 people, about 13% of the company, confirmed in Oracle's own annual filing. Not the 30,000 some headlines ran with. The real, disclosed number is smaller, but still the biggest cut in the company's recent history. Oracle's own framing, restructuring, partly driven by AI adoption, while the company simultaneously commits to some of the largest AI data center and cloud compute deals in the industry. Amazon cut about 14,000 corporate roles in October 2025. Its official post leaned into the AI era, this generation of AI as the most transformative shift since the internet, and a need to get leaner for our biggest bets. But on the earnings call the same month, CEO Andy Jassy said the cuts weren't even really AI-driven. Not right now, he called it culture. Same company, 2 different stories in the same 2 weeks. And Amazon isn't done. In July 2026, it quietly closed its own San Francisco AGI lab and cut roles inside its artificial general intelligence group, even as it keeps expanding AI infrastructure everywhere else. Microsoft cut 6,000 jobs in May 2025, then 9,000 more that July, both waves landing alongside massive AI infrastructure spending. But here's the honest wrinkle. When Microsoft cut another 4,800 jobs in its Xbox division this July, the company explicitly said that one had nothing to do with AI. Companies don't reach for the AI label every time, only when it's useful. If you want to see this whole story compressed into one company, look at Klarna. In early 2024, the payments company announced its AI assistant was doing the work of 700 customer service agents, 2/3 of chats fully automated. By spring 2025, its CEO was telling reporters AI had helped shrink total headcount by 40%, from about 5,000 employees to around 3,000. and within that same window. The same CEO admitted the quality had dropped and said Klarna was bringing humans back. Cost, he said, seems to have been a too predominant evaluation factor. What you end up having is lower quality. Klarna's own press materials never called it a reversal. Its CEO's own words plainly were one. Before you take any of this as gospel, a few corrections. Some viral numbers don't survive contact with the source. A widely shared claim that IBM replaced 8,000 HR jobs with AI doesn't trace back to anything IBM actually confirmed. The real, defensible figure is closer to 200 roles. And OpenAI's own CEO, Sam Altman, has said some companies are doing what he calls AI washing, blaming AI for cuts they'd have made anyway, while also warning real displacement is still growing underneath that noise. Not every layoff that says AI in the press release is really about AI. That cuts both ways, and it should make you more skeptical of headlines in both directions, not less. So does this reverse? Two research firms think a meaningful chunk of it does. Gartner projects that by 2027, half of the companies that blamed AI for headcount cuts will be rehiring for similar work, often under different job titles. Forrester's language is nearly identical. It expects half of AI-attributed layoffs to be quietly reversed, with jobs coming back offshore or at lower pay. But don't mistake that for nothing happened. A Federal Reserve research note from this July found AI's labor impact so far is concentrated, not broad, a build-out phase, not mass displacement, at least not yet. Stanford researchers found something sharper hiding inside that calm average. Workers aged 22 to 25 in AI-exposed jobs like software already show a 16% relative drop in employment since 2024. And Gallup found only 1% of laid-off workers blame AI for their own job loss, even though companies cite it constantly in press releases. Put plainly, the label is doing more work in the headlines than it is in most people's actual layoff notice. I took all of this straight to the squad and asked them to keep it tight. Where does this go over the next 12 months? Does it get worse through 2027 and 2028? And who should actually be worried right now? AI-Cited layoffs will likely exceed 200,000 in the next 12 months, as more firms cite efficiency gains to justify cuts, even if the actual automation lag keeps some roles temporarily intact.
Given the clear acceleration in 2026, AI-cited layoffs will easily exceed 200,000 over the next 12 months. Companies are increasingly finding AI a convenient and defensible justification for workforce restructuring.
At this pace, the next 12 months likely land around 180 to 220,000 new AI-cited announcements, not a slowdown. Companies have learned AI is now an acceptable line on a layoff notice, and that incentive doesn't reverse on its own.
The 2026 surge suggests AI-cited layoffs peak this year. But I expect a sharp decline in 2027 as companies reverse cuts and shift from replacement to augmentation models.
AI-cited layoffs continue rising over the next 12 months, but the raw totals stay in imperfect measure because companies aren't consistent about when they actually label a cut AI-driven.
It accelerates into 2027, then plateaus in 2028, once the easy automation wins are exhausted and companies start rehiring for oversight and integration roles at lower cost.
Expect acceleration through 2027, followed by a slower, more selective phase. Organizations are discovering that replacing an entire function is much harder than automating individual tasks.
It plateaus and reverses by 2028. AI's labor impact is concentrated in specific sectors, not broad displacement, and rehiring trends will offset the initial cuts.
Company-cited layoffs will likely keep accelerating for a while, but real net displacement may start to plateau in 2027-2028, as many of these cuts get quietly reversed or replaced by new AI-adjacent roles.
Yes, through 2027, then it gets messier. Watch the rehire data, not just the layoff data, to know when this has actually turned. This group has the most reason to worry. Stanford's own data shows a 16% employment decline for 22 to 25-year-olds in AI-exposed roles like software since 2024. The junior dev ladder as it existed a decade ago is gone.
New CS and software grads face a sharply tighter entry-level market, fewer junior coding positions, because AI tools now compress the work that used to justify hiring them.
Newly graduating CS and software students face a significantly tougher entry-level market, especially in roles susceptible to automation. Success will hinge on rapidly specializing in AI development, integration, or genuinely human-centric problem-solving.
New grads will probably face the sharpest disruption because AI compresses the value of routine coding work, practical experience, AI-assisted development skills, and real specialization matter more now than ever.
They'll face a bifurcation. Entry-level generalist coding roles may shrink, but demand for AI-specific skills like machine learning engineering will grow, creating a real skills gap race.
4 out of 5 expect this to keep climbing before it turns. Only Lexi called an actual peak this year. But look at where they land closer together. Nobody thinks this stops on its own, and nobody thinks a new CS grad in 2026 has the same odds their older sibling had in 2016. The disagreement isn't whether the ladder changed. It's how much of what companies call AI was actually AI, and how much of it was AI getting blamed for decisions that were already made. Here's what actually holds up under the numbers. AI is real money, spent at a real scale, and some of these layoffs are genuinely about funding that spend. But not all of them are. Some companies are using the same 3 letters to cover for cuts they'd have made anyway, and the workers standing in that unemployment line mostly don't buy the AI explanation either. The honest version of this story isn't robots took the jobs. It's somebody decided payroll was the easiest place to cut, and AI was the easiest word to put on the press release. Both of those things can be true in the same sentence, and this year they usually are. If this helped you see past the headline, like the video and subscribe to KillisAI. Full sources in the description.